quitting jobs, quitting a life in shackles when you decided to finally take the plunge into exploring your passion.
Was earning 81 lakhs in IT. I'm still earning nowhere near that in music.
I'm Naman Pandey, and in this episode, featured not expert is the theajsound, also known as Arjun Bhatt. Arjun is an IT professional turned full-time singer slash songwriter producer whose life journey in many ways makes me reminiscent of Farhan's journey in the movie Three Idiots. What exactly was motivating you to do all of these really uncomfortable things?
Was 2 weeks away from getting married and she left.
It's the equivalent of going into the gym and getting shredded after a breakup, right? But in art form.
Something inside of me was like a ticking time bomb.
How do you go about talking to your brain, telling it that, hey, you may be a little bit miserable, but you will also be happy because you're following your passion?
A couple of our videos blew up overnight. We got millions of views.
How do you take that success that is online and digital and transform that?
People think that comforts give them happiness.
We go over exactly what it feels like to quit your job and follow your passion midway through your life, and also go over what it might take to not have to do that in the first place.
There's nothing wrong with AdWords, right? That's the other misconception.
Were you always in a plan to quit your job eventually, or was it, I'll get to that someday?
The thing that worked really well with Teri Hasi is I brought the Western vibe and Western composition. I ended up marrying a fan of mine and brought her to New Zealand.
I don't know what my life's purpose is, what my passion is. So what should I do? In keeping with the theme of learning from somebody that's just 2 steps ahead of us instead of an expert, my goal with this episode is to showcase Arjun's incredible journey and what we can probably learn from it. This is the Ready Set Do podcast, and to support it, subscribe to me on YouTube and leave me up to a 5-star rating on Spotify or your favorite podcast apps. There are also links in the description for more direct ways to support me. And now, without any further ado, my friends, here's the AJ sound. Welcome to the Ready Set Do podcast, where we learn from journeys of not experts who are just 2 steps ahead of us. Arjun, welcome.
Hey man, good to be here.
Really excited to dig into all about quitting jobs, quitting a life in shackles, and exploring what lies beyond. So, can you kick us off here by talking about a little bit about the circumstances around, with your life, around when you decided to finally take the plunge into exploring your passion, which was separate in your case from the work that you were doing professionally? And maybe we'll start there and we'll continue to explore how you went about actually doing those things.
Perfect. So basically, my name is Arjun. I am Indian, born in Bombay and brought up in New Zealand. And, as I grew up, like most people, I observed people around me. I took advice of my parents who were, great. They have a great work ethic, but they've been in service basically their whole life. And so I got a degree, like most people, in IT. And then I worked in an IT job for 13 years. I was doing quite well as well in that, but something inside of me throughout that journey was kind of ticking, it was like a ticking time bomb or like a little itch that I had to kind of explore eventually. So during my 13 years in IT, I did get the opportunity to learn the guitar and then play with a few people in New Zealand here who were doing Bollywood covers at the time, and they were taking off on YouTube. So
Right.
a few of my friends then were able to take that. A couple of our videos actually blew up overnight. We got millions of views, and a few of them were able to actually go to India and pursue their Bollywood career dream, of singing Bollywood songs, live performing and stuff like that. And I would say at the time growing up here, I was not very, very attuned to my Indian roots. I was more kind of growing up on English music like Ed Sheeran, Ali Gaddy, Taylor Swift, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And but I was still interested in music. So I kicked off this AJ sound thing probably in around 2014, 2015.
Wow.
But I only seriously started writing my own original music in 2020. So in 2020, I actually released my first song. And for 2 years, I did English music, and it wasn't really working. I only had like 2,000 followers. YouTube was not growing because obviously by 2020, every Tom, Dick, and Harry was doing covers, especially English covers. So it was very hard to kind of stick out. And plus, I would say I wasn't like amazing at the time. So it was very hard to stick out. But then eventually, with a few friends and stuff, they were encouraging me, why don't you do Hindi music? And I was like, okay, why don't I just give it a try? So I did a couple of Hindi songs. And the second song I did, Teri Hasi, which you can see I've got tattooed over here. I've got it tattooed over here. That took off. It actually just took off. And that's what kind of kickstarted my career in Hindi music, I would say roughly in 2022. So I'm quite new to the game when it comes to Hindi music. It's only been about 2 years now,
Mhm.
but it's taken me to India. I spent 8 months in India last year. I ended up marrying a fan of mine and brought her to New Zealand. And now here I am. So I hope that kind of summarizes my circumstances.
That's perfect. No, that is the most succinct summary that you could have possibly given. So, and you've also given me so much to already bounce off there. So we'll just take it one question at a time. So the first one being, what were some of your learnings about just putting music out on YouTube? I know everybody, like, you want to make sure you have the most polished audio, you want to have kind of a good music video and such, but when you were first starting out, what was that process like where you were figuring things out on your own? And it sounded like at first you were doing English covers, and it sounds like writing and composing an original song is just a completely different ball game from just doing covers. So, can you talk us through that experience where you were having to write new music, that too in Hindi, which sounds like wasn't your go-to forte at the time?
Of course. So with anything you do in life, and there are lots of different frameworks for this in Japanese and Buddhism and Hinduism and everything. But essentially, it's this process of when you first start doing something, it's actually quite good to mimic people, when you first start doing it. And then over time, you sort of make that process your own. And then once you've made it your own, eventually you get to a point where you are the innovator. You're making, strides in that industry. So I kind of followed the same format. In 2014, I was looking at my favorite artists, Ed Sheeran. A lot of people say even now when I sing English songs that, oh, it sounds so much like Ed Sheeran because all those years I just mimicked Ed Sheeran,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And it started that way. And honestly speaking, I would say that when you first start, it's very easy to fall into this trap of constantly looking at all this knowledge and getting overwhelmed. But I would say the way I started and the way I would suggest everybody get started in this thing is to just do it, put it out there, and automatically learn from video by video or song by song. You know,
Okay.
make sure that every song you do, you're learning something new and you're making it a bit better than the last one rather than worrying too much about, oh, it has to be perfect because I've seen artists even till today, they're in this cycle of kind of what should I say? They'll make only one or two releases in a year
Right.
because at the end of the day they're worried and they keep tweaking this and tweaking that. But reality is you can't swim even if you're learning to swim. I'll take that example, right? You swimming 1,000 laps in a day is not going to make you better. It's only when you swim in different pools in different circumstances with different strokes that
Mhm.
you actually start improving. So at the end of the day, doing more music is better than trying to fix one song endlessly for the rest of your life. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
so start that way. Start by mimicking somebody, start by doing covers, and as you get better, you'll develop your own style and your own flair. And then over time you'll create a vibe of your own. Um, how did I jump to original music?
Yeah.
I think the tough thing is there's no formula for original music. Some people start with melody first, some people start with lyrics first, some people start with production first or instrumentation first. So
Okay.
when it comes to original music and art in general and creativity in general, there's no set pattern, and that's what scare is a scary thing to jump into. But like I said, with original music, you have to just give it a try. You have to make some shit songs, and then they'll get better. There's no simple way to say that. It is what it is. Start somewhere, and then you'll tailor your process as you do more and more music.
So
Yeah.
with Teri Hasi, was your process then like, had you written a few songs before that you maybe didn't publish, that was just for your ears and maybe your friends', and then eventually when you stumbled upon Teri Hasi, you realized that maybe I have something here and you decided to put that out? Or were you still continuously publishing new music on YouTube before that also?
Yeah, so I mean, by the time Teri Hasi was written, which was probably late 2022, I'm thinking, because it released in Feb 23 on Valentine's Day. But I probably wrote it in November or something, and then I was a bit insecure about my Hindi and all sorts of stuff. Um, so I did write another Hindi song called Har Janam with a friend of mine, and we actually released that. And that actually did pretty well, compared to my English song that it had done better than any of my English songs. So already there was a bit of spark and a bit of, and I don't like to measure success based on the views and all that stuff. But when you're first starting out, you kind of need some sort of reference point, right? Because, if the audience is not engaging and stuff, but then they suddenly start engaging, that's good feedback to take on. Um, so after I did
Yep.
my first Hindi song, the engagement was better than my English songs because my English songs was my reference point. And then I was like, okay, now it's worth, I think, releasing Teri Hasi. The thing with Teri
Roughly,
Hasi,
how many subscribers did you have at this point? Ballpark?
honestly, I can't remember, but I would say probably around followers on Instagram, probably 2K,
Okay.
YouTube, probably 2 or 3K.
Okay.
So
Got it. So
it was
pretty early on still. Yeah.
very beginnings, yes. So, like I said, the English music hadn't worked for many years. There was nothing special in it, according to people, which is good feedback to get actually as an artist. And I think the thing that worked really well with Teri Hasi is I brought the Western vibe and Western composition.
Hmm.
I managed to find a really good lyricist in India because obviously I'm not going to try and write Hindi when I can barely speak it at the time. So it came together well. And then the other thing that stuck out to people was my accent. They were like, man, your accent is very catchy. Because even if I sing Teri Hasi live now, people say it doesn't have that zing as it used to. But what they actually tell me is, the way I sung some of those words were like so weird and so different for them that,
Okay, I see.
it became very catchy.
It drew them towards the your music because it was unique in that way. You weren't pronouncing words the way they were used to, and that made you stand out almost.
Exactly, exactly. So yeah, I guess that's the.
No, I mean that makes total sense. I'm just kind of trying to put myself in your shoes, and like I get that I'm at a stage where I've decided to finally writing the music. I have, I'm working with the lyricist. Yeah, it all sounds so nerve wracking to me to put oneself through all this. I mean, so what would you say was the primary motivation behind you doing all of this? Was it just to, eventually become what, like, was it fame, which is a perfectly valid goal to have? Or was it more of just like this is my art, I'm really passionate about this and I want to put this out in front of the world because the world deserves to see this, and I'm doing myself a disservice by not putting it out there. So, what exactly was motivating you to do all of these really uncomfortable things?
So you've covered both sides of the coin, which is great because I've been on both sides of the coin. So I would say when I first started doing music, now this is before the Hindi, when I
Hmm.
first started doing original music in 2020, it had just been at the back of a very bad breakup for me. My, I was 2 weeks away from getting married actually, and she left, so we were engaged.
Yeah.
My family was flying back to India from US and all sorts of stuff, because my family spread all over the world. And I remember I spent from 1st to the 8th of January on the phones telling people it's not happening when it was scheduled for like the second week of Jan or something like that, you know? So after that,
I'm
what
so
happened?
sorry to
No,
hear
no, it's
that.
all good now. All good now. It's all part of the journey. And see, the thing is, at that time, a friend of mine was saying, why, now that you've got your second life, basically, why don't
Mhm.
you take the opportunity to do music? Because now you no longer have a responsibility to anybody that you have to get a job and this and that. So why don't you actually give it a go? So that's how it all began. Um, Now, when it all what was the question again? Sorry, I just don't want to go too far away from
No, no, you're good. And you were still on track. The question was what was motivating you to,
thing. Yeah,
put so much time and effort into doing all of this in the first
that's right.
place?
So the reason I gave you that context is because initially, honestly speaking, it was like, screw this ex. I want to show her that I can be somebody. That's
Okay.
that's how it started. Okay, but
Yeah, it's the equivalent of going into the gym and getting shredded after a breakup, right?
correct, correct.
But in
And
art
it's
form.
okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. There's nothing wrong because it motivated me in a positive way to do something positive at the time. But then, like I said, you covered both sides of the coin because as I went through the journey, I realized that this motivation is not going to sustain the journey, because the journey gets harder than the motivation. And so I needed to find something deeper within me as to why I should keep doing it. And that over time transformed into a love for music itself. So now, whether you tell me, whether I get a million views, whether I get a billion views, whether I get 10,000 views, for me, it's more about, did I enjoy the process of making the song? Do I enjoy making songs? Did I enjoy collaborating with that person? So these things have become more the reason why I do it now. And it's just purely for the love of music. Yes, of course, as a human being, sometimes it creeps in that, okay, I hope for external success, of course,
Of course,
but
yeah.
it's not the primary driver anymore.
No, that makes total sense. And I mean, I'm just kind of, it's just remarkable to me how you are just able to talk about clearly such a traumatic event in your past just so normally. It really shows that, at least to me, it feels like, not only have you completely healed from that, but you're just in so many ways better off. And it almost sounds like, you don't even think it was necessarily a bad thing. It was just a useful, important step in your journey. And I mean, I just want to commend you for that attitude, because that type of stuff is, it's enough to break most people. I feel like I don't even know what I would do if that happened to me. So yeah, I mean, I think it's really, really commendable. The bravery you've shown through this entire ordeal.
Thank you, man. And honestly speaking, it did break me for a period of time. And at the time, I remember I used to tell myself, like, oh, it's just a blip in the journey of life. But at the time, it was not just a blip, it was like what was happening.
Yeah.
So, and I remember that first year of music, for me, it was like, it was more about the glam and the life of an artist
Yep.
rather than actually the actual life of an artist. So if you look at actual artists like Arijit Singh, Sonu Nigam, Ed Sheeran, more time is spent on the music, on the riyaz, on all these aspects. Whereas you see glimpses of them partying and you see glimpses of this and you think that's the life.
Mm.
So that first year of mine, I remember 2022, I would say close to when COVID hit and everything shut down, my friends and I used to go out and party 3 times a week. We used to get drunk. We used to do all sorts of rubbish. And it started like that. It has to start like that. Before you learn, you have to make the mistakes.
Yeah, no, that's true. It's true. I mean, you don't know what can hurt you unless you're already hurt, in a lot of ways. So Um, that all makes sense. And then continuing kind of your arc, and then obviously now we're at the, redemption part of your arc, although maybe that's not a word that you would use. But how did you go from there to, I guess I'm just trying to understand. So again, putting myself in your shoes, you put out Teri Hasi, it did really well on YouTube, but you're still in New Zealand. How do you take that success that is online and digital and kind of transform that into a tangible thing that you can envision by playing to a live audience? And just really the logistical part of that seems, I'm just trying to wrap my head around that. So can you walk us through how you brought all of that into existence, where you went from just being this guy on YouTube to actually playing for your fans?
Sure. So this is a very good question because I think this is the critical part about the age we're living in now and the opportunity that is ahead of us. It's like how you're doing your podcast. It's not just limited to people in your neighborhood that are going to watch. There'll be people in India watching, there'll be people in New Zealand watching,
New
you know?
Zealand, yep.
Correct. So it's exactly like that. It's to be able to see the technology has given us the opportunity to be accessible globally, worldwide, you know? So, and also by the time Teri Hasi had come out, I had done 2 years in this game. So I had some knowledge of
Mhm.
social media and adverts and all this and that. So one day I just said, you know what? I've been trying to advertise to New Zealand all the time and I've had English music and stuff so fair. So why don't I today try and advertise to India?
Okay.
Okay, so I started running ads from Google AdWords and from Meta ads and stuff. I
Mm.
started running those campaigns into Bombay, Delhi, Pune, Bangalore, all the main centers of India,
Uh,
and it just took off after that. And the thing was, after that, I didn't need to do ads so much because the organic growth grew as well.
mhm.
But I use this. It's like you said. How do you then take it from something that's growing and make it sustainable and long term? You have to keep pouring fuel on the fire.
I see.
And any entrepreneur will tell you this, right? Like if there's a fire that is working, it's already burning. You spent all this time rubbing and rubbing and rubbing, and now there is a small flame. Don't let go of that flame.
Mhm.
Pour fuel, right? So I spent over the last 2 years, I would say I've spent at least 10, 15,000 on adverts, right? But
Okay.
the ROI is only starting to show now. This is my first profitable year doing music.
Congrats.
So thank you, man. Thank you so much. So that's what it is. It's number one, to answer your question, you have social media, you have internet. That's
Mhm.
something that people in the 90s and early 2000s didn't have. So already
Mm.
we're at a massive advantage. But these platforms are now saturated. So you have to learn to use the platforms to your advantage. You
Makes
can't
sense.
just be doing the same thing that 20,000 other people are doing. You have to find your mix. Once you find your mix, even if it takes adverts, start pouring fuel on it
Mm.
and see where it goes. And everyone,
Mhm.
there's nothing wrong with adverts, right? That's the other
Yeah.
misconception. If you look at even Badshah, Honey Singh, all these guys, there's a lot of money going behind that promotion that people don't see. Nothing is purely organic.
Right. And exactly. Yeah. I think I agree that I have heard of that notion also, where people are like, oh, he only became popular because he did AdWords. But okay, sure, that's not a bad thing. It's not a crime. It's like if you have a calculator, why would you do math on pen and paper, right? You would just use the calculator. You just getting to the output is the goal here, not the actual grinding of, multiplying and carrying over numbers and whatnot. So um I am curious about though, what was the, I guess, call to action, or what was the content of these ads? Was it more of a just to get awareness out there, or was it a this person is playing at this venue and like selling tickets and such?
No, so at the time, see, I only went to India for the first time in last September. Oh no,
Like in your
October.
whole life?
No, no, no. For music,
Okay, okay. Yeah.
right? And it wasn't just purely for music. It was also to meet this person, and then we ended up getting married and all that. Separate story.
We will get
Um,
I am very curious to explore that also, but I will let you
yes.
speak for now.
No, no, we'll go for it. But I would say so. October is when I went to India for the first time for music. But even that said, I've never performed live in India as yet for a proper my own show.
Yep.
So that's still a to do. Yeah. But you'll have to remind me of the question again.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So I guess so when you went to India was like what, so I guess what was your goal in terms of growing your music career? Were you talking to other artists there, or as you said, you had a lyricist out of India? I'm just trying to understand how you kind of leveraged the geography of India to, grow your career as a musician.
So basically, the first step, and I think you talked about, was it awareness or was it direct marketing to sell tickets
Yeah.
and stuff, right?
Yep.
So yeah, so to go back to that, it wasn't for anything direct. It was purely for brand awareness. Because what I understand now is that brand is the key.
Hmm.
Because I'm not interested. See, you can look at it two ways. You can say that, do you want to sell a product right now, like one particular song or something? Or you can look at it as, do you want all your products to do well in the next 10, 15, 20 years?
Mm,
That's the decision you have to make. So even with your
interesting.
podcast, right? Your podcast is not just you're done today and then only the 15, 20 episodes that you've recorded. It's actually for the next 30, 40 years, you want people, and even after you're gone, you want people to check out your podcast.
It's true. Yep.
So it's all about the brand in the long term. So for me, even till today, even if I have a show, yes, I might do, one ad for the tickets just to get those extra ticket sales. But I'm
Mhm.
banking on the fact that my brand growth is actually going to aid to that. So that next show comes along, the tickets are already 75% sold because of the brand work that I've put in prior.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my even with YouTube, my goal is to get followers that are long term and real. And when I say
Mhm.
that, even with marketing, you pay for reach. So all you're paying for is to get your product in front of people.
Mhm.
Ultimately, the product has to be good. The music has to be good. The
Mhm.
podcast content has to be good. Because people are the ones that decide whether they're going to click on it and whether they're going to follow your profile. And even your profile needs to be good, because if they come to your profile and you have just two pieces of content, again, they're going to be like, what's the point? So
Absolutely.
It's a very hard one to answer, but I would say, to keep it short, brand, but there's a lot that goes into that.
That makes total sense, and I'm just reminded of one of the guests that has been on this podcast, Parth Vijayvargiya. He's a YouTuber. He's a content creator around study abroad content creator. And what you're saying, he said something very similar along the lines of like, say somebody comes to my podcast YouTube and they find that I have released like 10 episodes. Obviously, I'm on like 35 now, but we'll just assume that I've done 10. And then the last upload was, like 3 years ago. This person has no motivation, or there is no reason for him to subscribe to me, because why would he? My channel is clearly not even active. So why would he even subscribe to that? So that makes sense. And it's so interesting to me that, you know, completely different trajectories of content creators, or just people that have online personalities and digital brands. Really, all roads lead to Rome in so many ways, in that the fundamentals don't change, which is that you need to be consistent. You need to have a high degree of quality for your product. You need to make sure you're not putting out stuff that's just there for the sake of putting out. I just think it's more interesting with music because, again, I would just struggle so much to put out art like that. And it's just so nerve wracking, honestly, to me to even think about, like doing such a thing. But I'm curious to explore though, while you were doing all this, at the time you had a job and you were kind of doing this on the side. I want to explore your, thought process around the job aspect of this. So, were you always in a, plan to quit your job eventually, or was it just like a maybe I'll get to that someday? And, how did you work that whole thing aside with, doing both these things at the same time?
See, I have always wanted to do music full time since about 2021, since I realized that 2020 was an exploratory year. 2021 onwards, I always wanted to quit. I always wanted to make music full time because it got that switch, like I told you, it went from, oh, I'm doing this for revenge, I'm doing this for fame,
Yeah.
to I'm doing this for myself. And the minute I'm doing this for myself, I realized that that was the happiness that I was missing all along. That was that inner irritation that I had, you
Mm,
know? And ever since that happened, I said, I'm going to do this full time. But it's not easy. So, see, when you're young, and this is why I say, get into this career as early as you can. Because when you're young, you don't have much responsibility. You can just leave everything aside, live with your parents, eat their food under their roof. All your basics are covered for you while you explore this. As you get older, or maybe you have a wife, maybe you have kids, the more responsibilities you have, the harder it is to just say, drop this thing altogether, because you still have to make money. But to those people, and to people that, a lot of us are held back by fear also, that, okay, I was earning so much. I was earning 81 lakhs in IT, for example. I'm still earning nowhere near that in music as yet.
mm,
But I know that if I keep doing it, it's going to get to that point. So, like I said, a lot of people have that comparison mindset also, because that's what everybody's kind of, society is kind of putting on you, like, oh, if you're not making the same amount, then it's not quite working yet. So that's okay. You don't have to get out of that mindset initially, but what you have to realize is, you will have a point where you're doing it on the side. And when that side hustle slowly starts building, there will be at some point you'll be able to say in your heart that I no longer have fear that this is going to let me down, and you can drop this one. So that's the advice I give to most people, because most people don't have the luxury of a house, money, this, that. Most people are earning it at the same time. So to most people, I say, do it as a side hustle, build the confidence in your side hustle, build the skill set. Once you start getting and seeing that money come in, once you're at a threshold that your risk can tolerate, then you can drop your full time and
mm.
focus on it as your main thing. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I think I really like your idea about um just don't let it become an emergency. Like, that should be, your happy path, right? Your happy path should be, just don't get into this situation where at 30 you need to finally be like, oops, I guess I can't do this. I actually want to do this other thing. Now how do I do that? So completely on board with that. Although obviously, it's easier said than done, right? Because as you said, as we grow up, there's just so much pressure from society, from our parents, from just just everybody around us. And most people, I would say, crave a life that has, I don't want to say luxury, but, just a comfortable life. So I guess my question to you at this juncture is, how do you rationalize this fact that your life might not be as comfortable as it is currently if you were to follow your passion, which is really unfortunate that you have to make that trade off in the first place, but it is a very real trade off. So how do you go about, you know talking to your brain and telling it that, hey, you may be a little bit miserable for the next few years, but you will also kind of be happy because you're following your passion? Does the question make sense?
It's
Firstly,
a
I
very good.
feel like I didn't say that very well.
No, no, you said it very well, and it's a good question because, see, a lot of people think that comforts give them happiness. It's like you said, miserable and happy. You can't be miserable and happy. You're either one or the other, right? They're like polar opposites. So people think that comforts give them happiness. I might be living in a beautiful villa, this and that, with a big mortgage, but I'm going to work every day. And I think I'm happy because I'm coming home to this luxury. But
Mm,
where are you having even the time to enjoy the luxury? You know what I mean? So
mm,
people are actually not as happy as they think. If they actually sit down to question themselves, right? It's a very easy decision because your brain will tell you otherwise. Your brain is very logical and rational and takes all this input from society and parents and this and that. But your heart doesn't, right? Your heart and your body will tell you when you're unhappy. So at the end of the day, listen to your happiness. Don't listen to your rational mind. Listen to the happiness and the emotion. If you feel at some point and your heart is calling you towards, okay, I'm going to lose, maybe I'm going to not make 81 lakhs this year. Maybe I'm only going to make 5 lakhs this year. But with that 5 lakhs, I can still put a shelter over my head. But it means I can, I have my own freedom of timings and stuff. And I get to spend 10 hours a day on my passion. If your heart is calling towards that, then give it a go because most likely you're going to find yourself with more happiness. Also, the opposite can be true. Maybe you tried it for 6 months, you weren't as happy as with your
mm.
luxurious life. That's also fine, right? Because there's nothing wrong with wanting those luxuries, but you have to be honest with yourself. Is those luxuries and that comfort giving you the happiness, or is pursuing your passion going to give you the happiness? Because at the end of the day, your passion will get you those comforts eventually, right? It's not like it
Yeah.
won't. It's not like it won't. Even with IT, I worked in IT for 13 years. Can I say that I've tried it in music for 13 years? Not yet, right? But because I'm so passionate about music, in 13 years, I know that I can go a lot further than what I did in IT because of the passion to drive it. But
Mm.
the reality is that success that you've got in your full-time job, it's not so linear in a creative field. It's up and down. And in a business, it's not so
Yep.
linear. You might have 1 year where you do really well. You might have 1 year where you do not so well. But at the end of the day, is that life going to give you the happiness, or is it the comfort that you're surrounded with? That's the question you need to ask.
Mm.
And most from I would say for 98, 99% of people, it'll be the lifestyle and the pursuing the passion, not the comfort.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, I guess, trying to word this in a way that isn't me going around in circles for 2 hours. But yeah, I guess I'm getting at, what I'm picking up from what you're laying down is, um, it you have to have a lot, like a scary amount of self confidence, to me at least it feels like, to be able to take that step, because all of what you're saying is well and fine, but how many people do you think are able to actually commit to themselves and tell themselves that, sure, no matter what happens, I'm going to give this a real shot. I'm going to leave this life of luxury that I have, and I'm going to go all in on, just completely bet on my abilities. There's a quote on this that I really like. I just looked it up. It says, "You only live twice. Once when you are born, and once." Well, that's not the quote actually. Never mind.
No, but I know the one. Yeah.
Do you know the one? It's the other one. Yeah, I would have to look it up. It's so good. I will link that. I completely butchered that. This one just
No, no.
annotated is, and once when you look death in the face, which is not nearly what we are talking about. So Either way, but I guess, yeah. Would you agree, though, about the self confidence thing? Do you think that's the most important trait that would get you there, or is that something else?
Most important, I'm not sure, but it is a very important one. I'll tell you why. I mean, maybe most important. I'll tell you why, because the reason at least I can say that I wasn't confident, and I think I see this in a lot of people now, is because I've actually done nothing that I can be confident about.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So if you actually spend time, even if it's a hobby, okay? If you spend 4 years doing it as a hobby, forget about a side hustle. Even if you just do something religiously every day for 4 years, 5 years, right? They have these 10,000 hour rules and stuff, rough guidelines. But you do something for 5 years, you're going to get better at it.
Yep.
Once you observe that you're better at it and you're better than the average person at it, you will have the confidence. Why would you not have the confidence? The reason people, I feel, is not confident and are fearful in the first place is because they've never actually tried anything or stuck to it enough. You
Yep.
know? See, now if anyone, whether it's AR Rahman or anyone comes to me in a studio, I'm confident that I can produce well, maybe not as well as them, but I can produce well enough that someone will take a notice, you know? That confidence is there. I'm not no longer like, or if someone tells me to perform a live show, I don't have nerves, you know. Of course, you're nervous because you want to do well to some degree initially, but the minute you're in that zone, you're good because you've done it so many times before. So it's just one of those things that I think a lot of people are fearful and haven't developed self confidence. And, you know, we all look to these memes and this and that and Instagram and all this for advice. But the reality is, spend the time to build your self confidence, build a skill set, become good at something. Then there's nothing to not be confident about, you know?
Yeah, and adding to that, confidence also comes from preparation. So if you are really well prepared, as you said, to your point, if you have spent a lot of time doing something and have gotten really good at it, you will automatically get the confidence. I guess then the only thing that's left is just the luck side of things. Like, you know how you could do everything right, just, by the book, put in those hours and hours. But because art is so subjective and there's just really factors outside of our control, sometimes things may not blow up, but obviously I understand that that's just life, nothing's guaranteed. You just need to take the plunge into the deep end and just see what happens from there. So yeah, I really enjoyed that, particular aspect and everything you laid down there. It's given me a lot to think about, as I'm sure it has for anybody listening, really. I kind of want to shift gears now a little bit to, your story about how you met your now wife. Sounds like she used to be a fan. Was there any sliding into the DMs of this artist that I really like, and then the artist comes and meets me, and so, or how did that all go down?
So I don't think either of us had intentions like this, right? But what happened
Interesting.
is she did message me and said, "You're gonna blow up one day." And this was before my Teri Hasi and stuff. She actually liked some of my English songs. And she's got a very good ear. She's a Bengali girl. And as you know,
I'm from
Bengali people are,
Kolkata, actually.
so then you know very well, right? That whole Bengali and stuff is like just full of culture and full of music and full of
They're
history and art.
very into, yeah, classical Bengali music is a, completely different ball game. I won't pretend to know about it, but yeah, I do know that it's very complex, and yeah, as you said, you have to have the ear, and it's real talent, I guess.
Exactly. So she has a very good ear. She has very good knowledge of music. Even till today, I call her Saraswati Ma because she has been given me so much guidance on my Hindi music and my production that it's grown tremendously since I've met her. But the thing is, how to answer your question again, I keep diverting.
It's all good.
But to answer your question, she DM'd me on the 29th December or something, 2022.
Okay.
Uh, and again, I had two engagement breakups in my life to add one more spanner in the works. So,
You're kidding.
honestly, I've gone through some hell, but also some of my doing as well. But anyway, we'll get to that if you want to. But anyway, right? So, 2022, she messaged me and then just a few messages, maybe 5, 6 messages here and there. One night I wanted to watch a horror movie, so I put it on my story and she gave me ideas and we started exchanging messages. That was early 2023.
Hmm.
Then, about, I would say, August or just before August, maybe, um, I said, I'm going to come to India to do music there. And then she said, "Oh, well, I'm a lawyer here and I have a lot of friends who can this? So do you need any help? So we started talking, and then one day she really liked a song of mine. I said, I'm going to release this song next. It was called Milade, and she really liked it when I sent it to her, and she said, "Oh my god, this is insane! This is going to blow! I have a lot of ideas." She called me up. We had a video call, and she had the whole video planned out in her head, just like this, within 5 minutes. You know, every
Right.
shot, every angle, everything.
As in a music video, right? We're talking about
Music
a music
video.
video.
Yeah. So she had planned out the whole thing in her head. So I was like, oh my God, like I was very impressed, that how does someone have so much visual and creative knowledge? And she seems to be capturing the vibe that even I didn't think of when I was writing the song. So we started talking, then she introduced me to people. We started talking more and more. And then one fine day I told her, look, I don't know how you're going to respond to this. And quite frankly, I don't care, but I need to tell you this that I'm falling for you.
Wow, that's so. I mean, that's spoken like a true poet slash songwriter.
And she just hung up.
Oh boy. Oh.
But then anyway, she came back to me and she was like, "Oh, that was a bit scary for me and stuff like that." But then we moved things forward. So by then I bought my tickets to India and I told her, "Look, on this day you're gonna have to come to the airport because I'm coming." And she was the catalyst. I've always wanted to come for my music, but the thing is, she was the catalyst to make me just hit that button and get the tickets and go.
Mm-hmm.
And initially, I only took a 1 month trip because I didn't expect it to last so long. But then when I got there, within a week, I was meeting her family. Then I spent the whole of Durga Puja with her and her family, got
Wow.
to know her really well. Then suddenly, end of October, we decided, you know what, let's just get married in December.
Wow.
So within
Huh.
3 months of knowing each other, and the connection was so good. Like I've never experienced such a connection with anybody. Till today, we still say that now it's been what, a year, almost a year since we married. Till today I say that we both say that we've met before in other lifetimes.
Hmm.
I
Like a
recognize the soul.
past life soul connection. Yeah.
I recognize the soul. It's just seems like a piece of me. So it's been really great, but that was the experience, and that's, I guess, the lesson here is a lot of people are scared of relationships and love, and nowadays they do all this open relationships and all sorts of arrangements and stuff. It's a sacred thing, man. Like I would say that for me, even though I've not been brought up in India and I thought India was more traditional and stuff, honestly, India has become more Western than Western,
Really
culture. Um,
interesting.
because it's just crazy. And I'm like, love and all these things are actually sacred, especially for artists. If you
Mm.
destroy that side of you by, taking advantage of this and doing all these things, I feel that it just taints your emotional connection to love, you know, which
Mhm.
affects your art ultimately. So
Wow.
that's just one perspective, but
No, I mean it makes total sense. And there's also these ideas about, I don't know if you've heard of this, but a lot of religious famous musicians throughout history have maintained that you need in your like life's trajectory some amount of heartache or heartbreak or just real pain to be able to channel that into art. And I think it was Rick Rubin that has said that um for he's like just the kind of a legendary music producer who's worked with a bunch of really big rock artists, especially when rock was coming up in America and such. And he has maintained that the one common trait that he has observed in all the musicians that he helped blow up was that they were almost overtly sensitive to just human emotions. And obviously, it's a double-edged sword because if you are overtly sensitive, you will feel things really deeply. When ideally, sometimes you wouldn't want that. That's not necessarily always a good thing, but it's a blessing and a curse because once you're able to imbibe all of that sensitivity, you're then able to channel that into your lyrics, your music, and that is what actually resonates with people. That is what moves them. That's what the whole art is all about. So it really sounds like from the little that you've shared about yourself in about the half an hour that I've known you, I think this rings true more than ever. I don't personally know a lot of artists or musicians, but I'm just blown away by, so many wheels are turning right now in my head, and so much is making sense. So, yeah, I mean, again, random tangential tour there, as has been true for our case for this entire episode. But just wanted to share that with you, and I kind of also want to collect your thoughts on that. Like, do you think your trajectory would have been the same minus the setbacks, we'll just say, that you faced in your life?
Not at all, right? Because see, you can look at it like a setback, or you can look at it like an opportunity to learn something new, right? Because all the experiences that we have ultimately shape us. And even whether it's a heartbreak or not, I've never been shy of love, because if you shut yourself away from these emotions, they're still there. It's just that you're not choosing to experience them anymore.
Mhm.
But as human beings, God has given, or creator, whatever, whatever people believe in, we have been given the beauty of consciousness and emotions. If we cannot experience the emotions because we choose to just shut it away, and because we choose to act a certain way, it's going to kill something in us ultimately, right? Because
Yeah.
it's still there. It's just that you're not acknowledging it anymore. So for me, even with my current wife, right, she had been through her own set of experiences that had told her, don't get married. Even
Mm.
till today, it's like, I didn't want to get married. Same as me. At the time, I was like, I don't really want to get married. But we still took that leap of faith in that, okay, we're feeling something here. It's genuine, it's not fake. Why don't we at least give it a go? Because if you stop doing things out of fear, it's going to be a problem, right?
Absolutely.
But
That
also on
makes
the other
total sense. Yeah.
and on the other side of it, it's the overindulgence also that's a problem.
Mm.
So for
Absolutely.
example,
Yeah.
yeah,
Everything in moderation, right? Yeah.
correct. So if you're in so much pain and you let the pain take over and you think that, the pain is your life, that's also a problem.
Yep.
So you need to kind of have that balance to understand where the emotion starts and ends, and where your actions and, where your choices come into play. That's very
Mhm.
important.
Yeah.
You can't just let the emotion take over and everything, or just press them away, vice versa.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, there's only so much dust you can sweep under the rug before it, just becomes a mountain. So, on that note, I do, want to acknowledge really how much brevity you speak with about these things. And I know that you've been doing some work with younger people, and in terms of guiding them towards their life journeys, trying to get them to start following their passion at an age, as you were referencing earlier, where it's still possible for them to do that. So I am curious to explore a little bit around that and really just get or understand what type of messages you share with these younger people with their brains are so much more malleable than old people like me. So just to kind of trying to get a sense of that, if you don't mind sharing.
It's the same thing, right? So it's like my wife says, sometimes when I'm speaking to her, I'll speak like this as if I'm on a podcast. And she'll say, why are you speaking like this? And I'm like, actually, I'm trying to speak in a way that is very universally understood. So the things I'm saying on this podcast are also the things I say to these youngsters, right? I'm not going to suddenly change my tact for them. The
Interesting.
reality is like I think you said it on this podcast. It's the fundamentals and the basics that you have to get right. Everything else follows from that. So it's the same thing. I tell the youngsters, they come and ask me, how do I become a good artist? And I tell them, are you a good human being?
Mm.
Because artist is nothing. Artist is like, just because you're making music or you're painting or something, it doesn't make you an artist. The
uh,
artist is all in the mind and in the spirit, right? Do you have the mind? Do you have the um the confidence? Have you developed the
mhm.
confidence? Have you developed yourself to a point where you're not no longer worried? See, one thing, I'll give you one example of this, right? Most people are afraid of what other people think, some
100%.
degree,
Yep. No,
right?
that's so
an
spot on.
artist an artist can never be afraid what other people think. You have to learn to take it on the chin. And it's not that you cannot accept the criticism. You have to accept it, because they are perceiving your art, right? They will have an opinion. It's not to say that their opinion is not valid. Their opinion is absolutely valid, but it
Mhm.
should not affect you and your art.
Mm.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean when I say that. So that is where these kinds of things is where an artist is made. This is where This is what confidence is, to put your opinion and be vulnerable and be okay to be judged, but not be affected by it. So
Yeah.
these are the things, these are the subtle things that I teach them. But yes, I teach them the music side of things because, of
Mm.
course, the skill set has to be developed. But
Right.
more than that, it's these things that I'm saying on this podcast. And it's the reason I go and do 10 other podcasts. It's not for fame, it's to get this message out there that,
Absolutely.
people have to develop themselves. Artist is in here, it's not out there.
So happy to, play a small part, hopefully, in, spreading this really important message out in the little way that I can, honestly. Yeah, I do agree with a lot of what you're saying in that, with especially with students or with, younger people. Um, Again, it cuts both ways. Like, sure, they are more, easy to take the plunge or to try new things, but it's also, in a lot of ways, it's just such a risk, because they could have just your normal career and just be perfectly fine. But then, yeah, there's this other, yeah, I feel like it's just such a balancing act that you have to do at all times, where you're like, do I want to be happy, or do I want to be, just self-sufficient and whatnot? Yeah, it's all very fascinating to me. Do you ever get asked by students that haven't yet figured out that they want to do music but are just more open? They're like, I don't know what my life's purpose is, I don't know what my passion is, so what should I do? Is that something that happens at all?
All the time, right? And it's not
Okay.
just young people, it's people in their 30s, even me. Like, had I not found music, I would not have known. So what I tell people is, if you don't quite know what to do yet, you don't know what your purpose is, you have to try everything. Only once you try everything will you know what's working for you and what's not. Maybe you're made to play cricket, who knows? Maybe you're made to be an artist. Maybe everybody comes to this world with some internal, how to say it, like some extra special knowledge, and everybody's
Mhm.
got their own journeys, before they've come here. And
Yeah.
basically, some people have music in them, some people have sports in them, some people have something else in them. But until you try everything, you don't know what you have. It's only once you start trying things and something sticks, then you know, oh, okay, I enjoy this. But
Makes
without
sense.
trying it, you don't even know what you enjoy. And I'll tell you the big difference between kids and adults, right? The big difference is, you remember when you were 5 years old, 6 years old, or little memories of when you were young? You remember how there was zero fear? It was never about fear. It was about just doing it.
Yeah.
Whatever it
One
was.
could
Whether
say
it
I
was,
did too much,
yeah. But that's what I'm saying, right? There was, if your parents said, "Oh, look, there's a horse, get on its back." No fear. You'll just go sit. Even though you're some small boy, you'll go sit on it without any fear of falling and stuff. So as an artist, I always tell kids, you have to get back to that way of living.
Mm.
You can't, you even adults, you have to become a child again, in the sense that nothing stops you from doing and trying new things and testing new things. And it gets harder the more established you are as an artist. It gets harder to do that because everybody's looking, there's expectations, there's responsibility, again, all these things.
Mhm.
But to be the best artist, you have to get rid of all that stuff. And when you're doing your art or when you're playing your sport, that all has to disappear.
100%.
It's like even Virat Kohli, right? He's a brilliant. Now he's doing this and that, and all sorts of stuff, and he's probably earning more from that than cricket at this point. You know,
Mhm.
but when he goes on the field, he's not thinking about his next brand placement. Everything's out of his
Yeah.
mind. He's thinking about the next ball. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So art is the same. Art is the same. You have to be in that kind of space.
Amazing. Um,
Yeah.
are you at all familiar with this book? It's called Mastery. It's by Robert Greene. Have you?
Honest,
Uh,
honestly, the only 2 or 3 books I've read is like autobiography of a yogi, and I don't read
yeah.
much at all.
So actually, that's actually even, extra fascinating, because a lot of what you just shared about the type of, things one can do to figure out their life's mission or life purpose is actually referenced in that book. And I'm just kind of blown away by just how spot on you've been with what's laid out in that book, which personally for me, this is something I've thought about a lot for no particular reason. It's just something that I was obsessed with for like a really long time. So I just read a bunch of books that covered this type of thing. And personally, for me, Mastery was the one book that just really stood out shoulders over the any other book on this subject. And I'm
Mm.
just just kind of blown away by however or whatever path you took to get to these things that you're saying, because that's exactly, or it's very much in line with what's written there. So yeah, I'm just kind of really bemused by that. But I think you're
Thank you.
spot on. And just to add on to what you said, one of the things that at least left an impression on me was this notion that we are molded by our parents, by society, by just really any older person around us, to drown out our inner voice, is how the book talks about it. So all of us have this inner voice as a child, that we're born with, that is good at, I don't even want to say good, but it's just a voice. It does stuff. It has its innate abilities that are unique to us. And then as we grow up, because of our surroundings in society and parents and whatnot, we are basically forced into a cookie cutter. And then what comes out of the end is literally just factory production of millions of people just like us. But in a lot of ways, finding your purpose is going back to that time. You could ask your parents, you could ask people that were around when you were growing up, and quiz them that what were those things that I did at that time that I would just spend hours doing without even realizing that I was doing those. And chances are your life's purpose has in some way or form something to do with what that particular thing was. So I'm actually curious to put this to test with you. As a child, were you musically inclined? Was there any connection there?
100%, 100%. So my parents have always told me, so they tried to put me for Indian classical lessons, Hindustani classical when I was 6. And I remember these lessons, okay? I used
Wow.
to hide under the bed, and my teacher used to come home, take my feet, pull me out, and make me sit,
Oh, wow,
right?
that's traumatic.
And it was just, yeah, like it's the funniest stuff, right? And my dad has been trying to make me play and play and play guitar since, and my dad is quite musically inclined, he's
Oh,
always listened to like English rock and stuff, but still,
mhm.
and he's played the guitar and sung for many times at parties and stuff, family events and stuff. But I think eventually I took the plunge to learn the guitar again because of an ex of mine,
Right.
because they all used to sit and play, and everybody seemed to know how to play an instrument, and everybody seemed to know how to learn. But anyway, going back to your question, uh, it could have been cricket. When I left India, everybody said that this guy's going to become a cricketer. Why? Because when I was younger, I used to play so much cricket. I used to be obsessed with Sachin Tendulkar everywhere. And to the point that I've made my grandma in India when I was young sit down with a phone book with me and try and get his number when I was like 6, 7 years old. Okay. So anyway, I was obsessed with Sachin, and I played. Then when I came to New Zealand, I played cricket for a few years. Even got to the under 19 Western districts and Auckland team and stuff. So
Really?
I was doing
Wow.
well. But then they told me fitness is something again I've grappled with my whole life. Now again I've put on a bit of weight. But the thing is, when I was 19, they said, "Oh, you can't go on because you're just not fit enough. So you have
Mm,
two choices: either become fit or you'll have to quit." At the time, I just quit. I was like, forget it,
yeah.
because it didn't draw me anymore like it used to when I was a child.
Yep, yep,
But
yep.
then when I picked up music after that, it drew me so much to the point that I was doing it for 14 hours a day. I couldn't even get off the computer.
Mhm.
So so yeah, looking back, cricket and music were the two potential things, and it
Yep.
looks like music stuck.
Amazing. Yep. Well, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, that's especially insightful, at least for me, because I'm still kind of in the process of working out what that thing is for me. But I'm sure one of these days it will, just a light will go on in my head and I will just be like, that's it. That's it. This is what I was waiting for this whole time. So just want to thank you so much here for taking the time today. I will say, and this I promise Arjun did not ask me to say this, but I have checked out Shehzada on your page. It is such a bopper. Like I have heard it a few times. It's almost a brain worm at this point. It's stuck. Sorry, earworm, not brain worm, but it's stuck in my head. It's really catchy. So anyone listening, please do check that out. I'm sure you will enjoy it. And yeah, really happy to stay connected and continue to watch your journey as you grow and as you make way more progress as you have. and really watch you blow up as a musician and as a singer.
Thank you so much, man. It's been wonderful talking to you. Excited to keep in touch too. Thank you.
That brings us to the end of that incredible episode of the Ready Set Do podcast. Thank you all for sharing these conversations with those that continue to benefit from them. If you would like to support me, the easiest way to do that is by subscribing on YouTube and leaving me up to a 5-star rating on Spotify or your favorite podcast app. It also goes a long way for me if you can share with all of your friends just how much you enjoy this podcast and what a great podcast it is. For any guest suggestions or feedback, my YouTube comments are always open, so please feel free to drop a comment below. Catch you all in the next one. New episodes every Wednesday.